There's an extreme weather conditions that are prevailing in the northern part of India. There's an extreme heat wave across North India. The impact, of course, is being felt on critical infrastructure. On the 17th of June, Indigo Delhi Bagdogra flight was delayed by over 3 hours. High ground temperatures impeded operations. This is what Indigo said. In fact, extreme heat, because of extreme heat, there has been recorded electricity demand across northern India, including in states like Punjab. Power cuts in multiple states because of this demand. On the 17th of June, operations were also impacted at Delhi airport after a voltage spike. Now, because of this heat wave impact, water crisis has been ongoing in the national capital. People have been grappling for their daily water needs, even as political war has broken out between the Aam Aadmi Party and BJP. Amidst all this political bickering, citizens have been hit hard, and heat wave and fires are also taking place in several parts of the country. Even as Centre has issued advisory to states, Centre has asked states to conduct safety audit of both schools and hospitals. About this, we have Sudhir Krishna, former Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development, Government of India. We also have Harjeet Singh, who is a climate activist, Global Engagement Director, Fossil Fuel Treaty. And we have Mahesh Palawat, who is the Vice President of Met and Climate Change. To you, Dr. Sudhir Krishna, first, I remember speaking to you when the Joshimath incident happened. And clearly, there needs to be some ways in which our urban planning needs to sort of, undergo a change. Our cities have to be resilient to the kind of climate changes that the world is witnessing. And what about infrastructure, sir? What kind of changes do you see in terms of policy making so that our infrastructure is something that is not really prone to the kind of risks that we see in the last few days? Okay, let me go to Harjeet Singh first. He's a climate activist. Mr. Singh, would you like to take that question?
Sure. So Vasudha, this is a real important issue, because when we talk about impacts of climate change, we see cities are suffering much more. Of course, the impacts are also in rural areas, but the impact of increasing temperatures and climate change leading to heat waves is impacting urban areas in many different ways. And as you explained, we are seeing economic disruption. We are seeing people, particularly who are working outdoors in the construction sector, are not able to perform their work, and which is going to impact the economy. And then there are also impacts on health. So clearly our cities are not resilient enough to deal with these kind of emergency situations, because the way we have built our cities, we really don't have enough green and blue spaces, as we call them. We have destroyed water bodies. Our building material that we use also traps more heat, and that leads to use of more energy and air conditioning, which leads to urban heat island effect. So basically, we are stuck in that vicious cycle, the way we have built our cities, the way we have destroyed local ecosystems, and now climate change is making it worse as temperatures rise.
Right. Mahesh Palawat, in the last few days, including in states like Punjab, we have seen power consumption really grow up. And, many places have also reported fires. And so what kind of awareness do we need in terms of policy making, and also amongst common citizens, to just tell them that weather patterns are in for a big change and they need to be prepared for that, even in terms of building their houses, kind of having the right kind of ACs. What kind of changes do you see in that aspect, sir?
See, now we have seen that temperatures are increasing day by day, and year by year new records are being broken. And this year we have seen that there was no western disturbance. Intensity of western disturbances were very less. Pre-monsoon activities were almost nil, leading to very hot weather condition across Indo-Gangetic plains. So the cities which we are developing, as Mr. Harjeet Singh has already said, that yes, the urban population is increasing day by day, and the infrastructure is also increasing. There is a load on the infrastructure because we are depleting the green cover, we are destroying the lakes and the streams, and that's why the temperatures are rising, and the urban the heat islands they are also being built up due to the development, and the green cover, when it is depleted, it rises the greenhouse gases, which increases the temperature. So we have to plant more and more trees, and we can say that the green cover should be restored in the urban areas also, and the consumption of electricity should be reduced. Green power should be encouraged. You can say the renewable energy should be encouraged, and as the heat is increasing, density of population is increasing, our development of the buildings are also very constructed in a haphazard manner, and the consumption of electricity, like air conditioning and all, which are emitting harmful gases and increasing the air temperature. So all these things should be controlled, and we can say that the only remedy is to restore to renewable energy, as well as the restoring of green cover, which we are depleting day by day. Yeah.
Right. Sudhir Krishna, sir, I spoke to you when the Joshimath incident was happening. There are fragile zones in the country, be it Himachal Pradesh or Ladakh. Tell us what kind of care needs to be taken when it comes to the ecologically fragile, areas of the country, and what kind of balance do we need to have when it comes to construction and, of course, tourism, and, of course, maintaining the ecological sanctity of those places.
Absolutely. The thing is, in city planning, at least 20% of the area should be green in the new layouts, at least 20%. And overall, the city should aim at, these are the standard guidelines, overall the city should aim at between 30 to 35% of the city should be green. But in the green should be spread all over the city. It should not be, confined to some parks or some parts only. So avenue plantation is strongly recommended all along the roads, and there are norms of the Indian Road Congress as well as the URDPFI guidelines of the Ministry of Urban Development, that how the avenue plantation should be done. And now it has been reinforced with the term which is globally being appreciated, the Miyawaki plantation, where the indigenous thick, you should not plant eucalyptus type of trees which grow fast but don't give much shade, or so the trees which are locally relevant, which provide shade and good green cover. There should be thick coverage along the roads, all along the roads, and the central verge also. So that will provide a lot of relief to the people who move around, and also bring down the temperature to an extent. So this, as far as, and the city, as I said, that groves should be there. There should be patches, green patches of thick green, not small shrubs kind of green, because even shrub is called a forest nowadays. That is the definition of Supreme Court, that shrub area also, and so on. That is all right from legal point of view, but from planning point of view, thick green is required for the cities. That is as far as the city planning is concerned. But as far as mobility is concerned, we have to promote public transportation system, because too many people taking personalized vehicles, particularly cars. You find in the four-wheel car only one person is normally there, and other than that, people should be encouraged to move to mass transportation system like bus or BRT or metro rail. But of course, last mile connectivity issue has to be sorted out, particularly in the summer season. That is also possible to resolve. So people have to be encouraged by the comprehensive mobility planning to migrate from personalized transportation system to mass transportation system. So that is the second part. As far as building design is concerned, as the other panelists have also spoken, green building design norms are there in the National Building Code, as well as in the Indian Green Building Council norms are there. So all these actions will definitely help the city cope. Last point is that road surface also. Of course, other panelists have rightly said that the blue should also be, blue planning of the water bodies, planning for the water bodies is also extremely, extremely important. That will bring down the temperature, because we cannot change the nature, but we can, become resilient to the changes in the nature. So the road designs are also currently globally, it is being talked whether we can have heat reflective coating on the road surface. So new designs, new technologies are coming, which make the road, buildings also. You put the building rooftop on that, you put solar panels. So not only it prevents the heat, it absorbs the heat in a constructive manner. You generate electricity while you do not let the building heat up so much. Panels also, window panes, and walls of the building, multi-story building, can be covered with solar panels. So there are new technology which are coming up, and definitely they will help us in a very constructive manner, cost-effective, constructive, and sustainable manner.
Okay. Mr. Palawat, what do you see as the role of the centre when it comes to building infrastructure, utilities, and also improving manufacturing that is in line with the climate needs of our times? And because increasing stress as heat waves have also pushed materials and equipment beyond the temperature threshold. We saw that with respect to airports and aircraft, and this could have an impact on businesses and also livelihoods of communities. How do you see our generation, how do you see our policy makers navigating something like this?
See, as the heat is increasing, we have seen the indigo incidents recently, and when heat is very high, so air density also goes down, air becomes thin, so buoyancy also decreases. In Air Force, I was in Air Force earlier, so we have seen whenever temperature increases beyond 45 degree, we suspend the air operation because the lifting of aircraft is restricted. So this is one of the factor. And now, as the buildings are not properly, we can say the development which is being taken place over most parts of the country, like urban development and the metro cities, two-tier cities and three-tier cities, there is no proper planning. As the panelist has already mentioned, that there should be some green cover at short intervals, or you can say development of community parks, and all these things should be encouraged. And the solar panel, which is very essential, which generate the electricity as well as cool down the buildings, should also be there. And the planning of building and the cities, or you can say the colonies or societies, should be such that there should be green cover in between, and there should not be very close to each other. There should be ventilation so that the air should move freely, and the temperatures may subside to some extent, because now temperatures are rising, air temperatures is increasing, extreme weather events are increasing day by day, year by year. So we cannot control the climate, but yes, we can make the resilient infrastructure, so which can cope up with the increasing demand of electricity as well as the rising heat, which we cannot control. It is not in our hand, but yes, we can do something in by planting more and more trees, and the restoring the water bodies, and the rain harvesting, all these things which can bring down the temperature and control the climate change. And although we cannot reverse it, but we can now restrict it to further enhancement, like the temperatures which are
that's
on
the kind
rise.
of calibrated approach that we're looking at. Professor S.K. Mehta, who's the Vice Chancellor of University of Ladakh, also joins us. Thank you, Professor Mehta, for speaking to us. We have seen in the last few days, activist Sonam Wangchuk also carried out this fast seeking action against, this widespread development that is happening, construction that is happening. Ladakh is seen as ecologically very fragile. Tell us, what kind of dangers do places like Ladakh face when it comes to the ecological context, and how important is that? Is it to be mindful of that when we consider tourism possibilities and also development possibilities?
Yeah, because of the changes in the temperature, rising temperature, there is a lot of effect in Ladakh also of the climate change. The Ladakh is actually home of maximum number of glaciers in the Indian Himalayan region, and the evidence has shown that satellite, all this through satellite observations, and we have University of Ladakh has a collaboration with Professor Marcus, Heidelberg University, and we have been studying these glaciers extensively, and we found that the glaciers are receding at a very fast rate, and there is a threat for globs are increasing, that is glacial lake, out the burst floods, which are taking place in this part of the world. And due to the less availability, few villagers have already migrated from some locations.
Right.
Like, for example, Kulom in Leh district and some in Zanskar. And, winters are warming so much last year, our vacations are from 15 December to 15 February. But
Right.
surprisingly, there was no snow in the December and January. That is because of the rising temperature and climate change. And we also observed that early flowering in the apricot is being observed in many locations. So that cycle is broken. How this flowering used to take place, and it is taking place at a different time, and this is affecting the crop production. And we also observed last year and last year, because of high temperature, tar on the road surface is melting in some of the parts of the Ladakh in days of the summer. And changes have been observed extensively. It has disturbed the local climate cycle, and so deserted Ladakh is prone to the water-induced disasters in recent years. And
Right.
we got from DST a climate change cell for studying all the climate changes which is occurring particularly in Ladakh from
Right.
Ladakh perspective.
Okay.
And Ladakh
Harjeet saying, that's an
data is very
important.
deficient.
Yes, that's a very
Yeah.
important Ladakh perspective. But sir, that also brings me to my next question. When you decide what a heat wave is, it's mostly done at the national level. But people have different lived experiences. A vendor in Chennai would look at a heat wave very differently from somebody in Delhi. So how important is it for policy makers to understand both the national and the local socio-political, socio-economic context, and how important is it for policies to be holistic in that way? Because this is also about livelihoods, and I was looking at some study which says that street vendors and people who workers are also facing the brunt of heat waves across the country because their livelihood opportunities have gone down by almost 50%.
Yeah, you're right. This is affecting the local people. Vendors, as you mentioned, the vendors are being affected by the climate change, and rising temperature is affecting. Now, as you mentioned, Delhi also, particularly, the plains are affected a lot. The temperature rising very fast, and it is affecting everybody. And because in Ladakh, particularly in Himalayan region, we depend on the glaciers. We depend on the water, which is already a problem in this part of the world. So I think policymakers has to focus on this. First thing is to collect the data. How this changing are taking place, and then to take remedial measures. We have to sensitize everybody to take care of the problems of this climate change. I think this is occurring, and this is occurring as a fast rate. We have to take into account all these aspects, and we have to sensitize public, policymakers, everybody, to make the guidelines in such a way that we have to take countermeasures to tackle all these issues.
Harjeet Singh, sir, would you like to take that question? Because we're also talking about the local context here. And more importantly, if I point to some data, northern region has been witnessing a record demand of power due to prevailing heat conditions. In fact, on Monday, what data says is that there was a highest ever peak demand of 89 gigawatt, which was, of course, successfully met. But several states like Punjab are also, sort of really stressed. And such high demand has also led to power supply cuts across cities in northern part of India. Lucknow and Meerut were the most affected. How do you see this impacting our infrastructure and also livelihood and also employment?
Vasudha, this is such a critical question, and especially for a country like India, where still majority of our electricity comes from fossil fuels, particularly coal. And as we know that fossil fuels are responsible for the climate crisis that we are facing, that has caused global warming and leading to heat waves. So we are actually stuck in that vicious cycle. We are being affected by heat waves, and our adaptive strategy is to use more energy, which is coming from fossil fuels. I think that recognition has to be there, which is going to make things far more worse. So what we need is a far more comprehensive approach. And as you mentioned earlier, it's poor people. We need to recognize the inequality. People like us still have access to cooling systems, but what about close to 50% of our workforce is dependent on outdoor work, which means working without such benefits and conditions. So how do we support those people? So what we need to be doing is to strengthen our early warning system so that we can put that system in place. We also have heat action plans coming up from various states and cities that has to be intensified, and those can't just remain on paper. Those need to be implemented. And where we talk about climate resilient infrastructure, which means cool roofs, which talks about green spaces and efficient cooling systems. It's also about public awareness. This time during elections, and we have been responding to that climate change was not even on the agenda adequately when it was happening right in the middle of heat wave, and look at how much people are suffering. So we need to raise public awareness also at the political level,
Right.
so that we can see action from the local to national level. As you mentioned, local level action is important, which means all our elected officials at the local level need to be aware. And the last one is addressing the root causes. As we know, it is caused by global warming, climate change. So how do we start moving away from fossil fuels and also develop our adaptive strategy and become far more resilient in terms of infrastructure, in terms of human capacity, and our use of energy, land, water. So that all that has to be seen in a very comprehensive manner.
Right. Dr. Krishna, you've worked in the government. Tell us, has the importance of climate action even sort of registered with policymakers now? Because like Mr. Singh was also pointing out, we really did not see much of climate change in any of the manifestos. How do political parties need to sort of reconfigure their own agenda when it comes to climate action? And what can cities do in terms of, how can cities be planned better? Because do we need more cooling solutions? We keep hearing of artificial rains, but do we need shaded gardens? What are the realistic solutions that are possible to ensure that our cities are better livable? We have seen that every time a rain happens in Mumbai or Delhi, there is proper crumbling of infrastructure. How can one avoid that?
You have raised a very important question earlier also. You had mentioned about the fragile areas. How do they handle? The thing is, every area has to be seen in local context also. Of course, global and national context is important, but local area planning is very, very crucial. When talk of impact on the poor workers or wage employment, having the low level of wage employment, like the Amazon courier people and so on, the day and night they move around delivering things in suffering the heat. So the city action plan is required. The city have to gear up. Everything cannot be a national action plan. Of course, a national action plan can give a broad guideline, all right. Every city should make a plan as to how it will handle the heat situation. As I mentioned earlier, that green pockets, lining up all these streets with thick green cover, water bodies rejuvenation, making a mandate that buildings will be covered with solar panels. It is not difficult. Little small effort here and there, it is possible. And heat action, the local rest places, we have shade places where workers who are moving around can take rest. Today you don't find a place where you can take a respite. All this is in the guideline. You see, the URDP 5 guideline has made provision for everything. It is the cities who have to. Now the cities are looking up to Government of India and state government for guidance as to how to do. It is not necessary.
Right.
Everything is available. A city action plan for the climate management is possible and desirable. So this is high time that we do that. It is not only heat now. When flood comes, heavy rains come, the same problem in a different way. The same climate issue comes in a different way of how the city have to cope with extreme rainfall condition, the flooding of the city. So I think it's possible and doable also.
Right. Mr. Palawat, help us understand when we talk about damaged roads or delayed trains or grounded airplanes because of heat wave or climate conditions, how important is it to, sort of rework our infrastructure and also manufacturing capabilities to make them aligned with the climate of these times? And is it even realistically possible? Because, of course, the scale of changes that will have to take place is huge. How can one sort of have one solution for all of this?
See, we have seen that now as the temperatures are very high and as you have mentioned earlier that there is a difference in the heat wave over Chennai or coastal areas to the interior parts. So because whenever there is heat wave in coastal areas, when temperature goes beyond 37 or 38 degree, it feels like temperature will be more than 50 degree due to high humidity, discomfort level increases. And the manufacturing units like the workers which are working in unhuman conditions, because I have seen the tin sheds, the factory workers are working in tin shed. There is no proper ventilation, no exhaust fan, nothing is there, and so there should be some policy that there should be some rest period after every 2 hours, and there should be cooling solution for those workers which are working in inhuman conditions, because the heat stroke is very fatal, and they will suffer because they have no resources for themselves to cool down, or so cooling appliances are very costly. They cannot afford all these things. So the human capacity is also decreasing, because the human working hour will be less as the heat stress will be more. So there should be some policies by the government that there should be rest hours, some the shaded area should be there, the regular intervals. There should be some the intake of water should be there. So this type of solution can be made. And as our panelist has already mentioned, that the roads, the outdoor activity, the outdoor situation should also be improved by planting more and more trees and shaded trees, not only bushes or the short trees. And the green cover should be all over the places, most of the places. When we are the walking on the roads, there should be shaded area, and there should be resting place, and so that water availability, or some like in Hindi we say that pyaw should be there, so that people can cool down themselves. They can rest, and they can take water and all. So this type of policies or some initiative should be can be made by government, and local politician or local ward members and the block level members. They can do all these things.
So there are socio-political and of course economic consequences to the climate, to the kind of climate changes that we are witnessing. Thank you all of you for joining me on this show. Since May 2024, since about 2 months, a severe and extreme long heat wave has impacted India. In fact, several parts of India, and the heat wave has occurred in the dry season. We're all waiting for monsoons here, but clearly there are economic and also socio-political consequences of something like this, which is why political policy makers will have to be cognizant of not just the national solutions but also local solutions.